Welcome to the Undead Sages podcast, where we travel back in time to talk to long-dead wise men and women. My name is Moraine de Haan, and today we'll continue our inquiry into the thinking around violent resistance. You know, we often take resistance as a right, even a duty. And yet, the moment you claim that right, you awaken something unpredictable. Fighting injustice may restore dignity, but it can also unleash darkness, terror, betrayal, even ecstasy. In this series, we speak with those who resisted, and those the world tried to silence. Saints and revolutionaries, mystics and militants. Their words are sharp, their choices balanced on a knife's edge. You may not agree with them, but if you've ever clenched your fists in the face of injustice, then this is your conversation too. Last week, we interviewed Maximilien Robespierre, the architect of the Terror, a time of great struggle and uncertainty following the French Revolution. Under his rule, thousands were executed for not living up to his standards of virtue. His was a maximalist interpretation of when violence was allowed. He would say, until virtue reigns supreme and humanity has been born anew. Our first guest, Gandhi, took the other end of the spectrum. He said that violence was never okay, as it would unforgivably taint the soul of the one wielding it, which would only lead to injustice continuing to occur. Our remaining rostrum of guests all fall somewhere on the spectrum created by these two opposites. So today we'll be talking to Rosa Luxemburg, a socialist resistance fighter who certainly was no fan of violence, but who didn't completely rule it out either. Let's get into it. Please welcome Dr. Rosa Luxemburg.
Thank you. Though I must say, it's strange to be placed between Gandhi and Robespierre. One believes suffering redeems the world, the other believes heads do. I suppose I fall somewhere in between, if only because I believe in a world where no one must suffer or be decapitated to be free.
That tension, that desire for revolution without cruelty, runs through much of your work. Before we get into your philosophy, can you tell us a bit about how your own life brought you to these questions?
I was born in 1871 in a Polish Jewish family under Russian rule. The walls of my childhood were lined with books and laws that told us we were outsiders, laws that punished dissent. Early on, I saw how power worked. It was not held by the righteous, but by those who own land, factories, and guns. By 17, I was smuggling pamphlets and organizing strikes. I fled to Zurich, where I met Leo Jogiches, my comrade, my critic, my lover. We co-founded a revolutionary party. Later, I moved to Germany and joined the Social Democratic Party. At the time, it was the strongest workers' party in Europe. I believed change could come. But when the party supported World War I in 1914, I realized even well-meaning institutions will betray their ideals when faced with power. From that moment, I committed myself to revolution. But not just any revolution. A human revolution, one that would sweep away exploitation without becoming its mirror image.
Let's get to the central question of the series. Is violence ever justified in the pursuit of justice? And if so, under what conditions?
It is a dangerous question because it tempts the righteous to forget they are human. I do not speak from theory. I've seen violence on the streets, in the jails, in the trenches of the First World War. I do not romanticize it, but I also refuse to lie. Sometimes the ruling class does not listen to anything but force. When workers strike, they are met with bayonets. When they march, they are shot. What are they to do? Kneel, surrender? No. There are moments when resistance must be more than words. So yes, violence may be justified, but never glorified, and never as the first tool. It must be rooted in necessity, not in hunger for vengeance. And even then, it must carry the seed of the world we wish to build. If we dream of a society without domination, then even in struggle, we must fight domination in ourselves.
I want to quote something you said. Freedom is always the freedom of the one who thinks differently. How does that belief inform your thinking about revolutionary violence?
Completely. I fear that revolutions often turn inward once they succeed. They create enemies where there is only dissent. They punish thought. That is why I argued fiercely with Lenin and the Bolsheviks. I supported their fight against Tsarism, but I could not support their suppression of workers' councils, of opposition newspapers, of dissent. A revolution that fears criticism is not a revolution. It is a seizure of power by a new elite. I believed the soul of socialism must be democratic, not in the bourgeois parliamentary sense, but in the deepest way. A movement of the people, by the people, for the people, with room for disagreement, for argument, for learning. Violence that silences conscience is counter-revolutionary, no matter who wields it.
Your critique of Lenin is fascinating, especially because many on the left saw you as allies. But you resisted authoritarianism from the start, didn't you?
I did. Lenin was brilliant, ruthless, focused, but he believed that the party must seize power and then educate the masses. I believe the masses must be the revolution. Look, no one knows what a revolution will look like. It's messy, it's uncertain, but that uncertainty is necessary. That's where people grow. You can't impose socialism with a decree. It must be built with dirty hands and open hearts. Lenin feared chaos. I feared ossification. He wanted control. I wanted creativity. I would rather risk failure than build a revolution that doesn't allow people to speak freely.
You've mentioned spontaneity often. Why is it so central to your thought?
Because that's where life begins. Spontaneity is not chaos. It is the energy of ordinary people rising, not because someone told them to, but because they've had enough. During the 1905 revolution in Russia, I watched workers create their own councils, take control of their factories, challenge the Tsar, not because a party ordered them to, but because they felt the injustice with every breath. That taught me more than 100 books. The danger comes when a vanguard steps in and says, "Thank you, we'll take it from here." That's not liberation. That's theft.
You lived through one of the most violent events in history, World War I. How did that shape your thinking?
That war was the great betrayal. Millions of workers marched to their deaths, told they were defending their countries, but they were defending the profits of arms dealers, of emperors, of bankers. The German working class was told to kill the French working class and vice versa. I opposed the war from the beginning. I helped found the Spartacist League to resist it. We were small, we were hunted, we were called traitors, but we knew the real betrayal was sending men to die in the mud for a cause that wasn't theirs. That war convinced me that any system willing to sacrifice millions for empire cannot be reformed. It must be uprooted.
You were arrested many times for your resistance. Did prison change your views?
It refined them. Prison strips everything away. No podiums, no crowds, no comrades, just you, four walls, and your conscience. I discovered that I still believed. Even when sick, even when isolated, I wrote. I wrote letters, essays, reflections on nature and history. I observed a bird outside my window and wept, not from despair, but from joy, because beauty still existed. And that reminded me what we fight for. A revolution is not only about bread, it is about dignity, about life being more than survival. I wrote, I want to affect people like a clap of thunder, but I also wanted them to stop and feel the sun on their face.
So, would you say that the experience of being in prison sharpened your sense of what exactly it is you were fighting and fighting for?
Yes, absolutely. Before prison, I knew what I was fighting against: capitalist exploitation, militarism, the bureaucratic rot of so-called democracies. But inside prison, past stripped of everything, I began to deeply feel what I was fighting for. Outside, in the chaos of organizing and debating, it's easy to lose yourself in tactics, party lines, arguments about programs and slogans. But in a cell, alone, cold, no stage, no allies, you begin to ask simpler, sharper questions. What do I truly want this revolution to create? Not just in theory, but in the lives of actual people. And there, I found the answer. I was fighting for the ability of human beings to feel whole, to wake without fear, to love without permission, to think without consequence, to see beauty even in a frost-covered garden, and know that they belong to this earth and not to a factory or a regiment or a bureaucrat's ledger. The prison guards, the barbed wire, the silences, they showed me the shape of oppression. But the singing bird, the frost sparkling on stone, the kindness of a smuggled letter, they showed me the shape of freedom. So yes, prison made the stakes clearer. It reminded me that socialism is not just a system of economics. It's a defense of life itself, of all that makes us human and keeps us from becoming machines or weapons. It made me fierce, yes, but it also made me tender. And I think we need both.
Eventually, in 1919, you helped lead the Spartacist Uprising. It ended violently, with your death. Would you do it again?
Yes, without hesitation. We were unarmed, unready, but we were right. We stood against militarism, against capitalism, against compromise with reactionaries. And we were crushed by men who claimed to be socialists. Ebert, Noske, the SPD leadership, they used the Fricourt to murder me and Karl Liebknecht. They dumped my body in a canal. But what they couldn't bury was the truth. The ideas lived on. And listen, I don't believe in martyrdom. I would have liked to live, to write, to teach, to garden, to love. But if my death reminded people that freedom must not be bartered for safety, then it wasn't in vain, right?
Gandhi, in his interview, argued that violence always corrupts its wielder. Robespierre insisted that violence purifies the revolution. Where do you stand?
Gandhi's faith in the power of suffering is noble. But in a factory where the boss carries a whip, the workers' refusal to fight may only invite more blows. The oppressed must sometimes raise their fists. As for Robespierre, I find his logic terrifying. When violence becomes cleansing, it becomes endless. Each execution demands another. Suspicion becomes policy. Fear replaces thought. I say this: violence may sometimes be necessary, but never virtuous. Its use must be tragic, provisional, and constantly interrogated. A revolution that forgets its humanity has already failed.
You spoke of love, of joy, as central to revolution. That's rare in political theory. Can you explain?
Because revolution is not just about seizing power, it's about transforming life. We are not machines. We are lovers, dreamers, poets. The system we fight degrades all of that. It crushes tenderness, alienates us from nature, makes us suspicious of joy. I wrote letters from prison filled with descriptions of trees, of clouds, of birds singing in the morning frost, not because I was escaping, but because I was remembering what we fight for. A world where children can laugh without hunger, where women are not broken by labor, where we can look at the sky and feel free. Revolution must be rooted in love, or it becomes a prison with a red flag.
Final question. What would you say to people today, activists, dreamers, those on the front lines of struggle?
Don't let despair make you small. This world is cruel, yes, but the human soul is large. Defend it, grow it, feed it with action, with song, with courage. Never worship leaders. Think for yourself. Organize, speak, make mistakes, learn, love, rise again. And remember, freedom is not a gift. It is a struggle, a living, breathing, often painful struggle, but one worth everything.
Rosa Luxemburg, thank you for your clarity, your fire, and your humanity.
Thank you. And remember, those who do not move do not notice their chains. So move, always.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the Undead Sages podcast. Next week, we'll talk to Emma Goldman, who believed all of civilization contained violence that might, and often should, be countered with violence. It's bound to be a good conversation, so make sure you tune in. If you've enjoyed this conversation, please share it with your friends, rate the episode, leave a comment, and subscribe to the podcast.